Hi everybody. My name is Tero Vuorenmaa. I'm a CEO of Innoavia. Um, Today I was thinking to discuss a little bit about the drone regulation, which is usually not kind of like let's say, the most interesting item in the drone field. And mostly people are considering that the drone regulation at these days is very complex. It takes a long time. It's hindering what you can do and so on. But today I wanted to highlight the other side of the coin of the regulation. So what about if the regulation is actually enabler of your business, not an obstacle? But first of all, hands up a little bit. Who is flying drones? They start very well. 1, 2, okay. 3, all right. Then no further questions. So yes, the drone regulation is complex. It's complicated, and it's incredibly slow to get the permits to fly, especially when we are talking about the specific operations, for example, beyond visual line of sight flights or operating in the densely populated area. It does have a deep learning curve. There's a lot of pages that you need to understand and read it through. Getting the permit takes a long time, and regulation kind of limits what you actually can do. But what if the regulation is not actually a barrier? What if the regulation is actually an enabler of safe and scalable and credible drone operations? A little bit background. First of all, the European Union or EASA countries has a harmonized drone regulation, and it's actually something that many other continents doesn't have. It's as well actually kind of like a big advantage that, for example, if you get permits in Finland, you can then basically operate in any other EASA countries way more easier than, for example, that you start flying in Asia or in UK and so on. So it is actually this harmonized legislation is actually an advantage in the Europe. But why the regulation is often seen as a restrictive? First of all, the regulation is written in complex way and consists a large number of pages. Like if I see it, there is 468 pages in the EASA easy access rule, what you basically should understand before kind of like you are able to make the permits or applying the permits. Additionally, even though the legislation is harmonized, each CAA has their own interpretation of the regulation. For example, in Finland, we are relatively, let's say, more restrictive than some other EASA countries is. And this, of course, always brings more complexity. The steep learning curve and the kind of amounts of interpretation required lead to the perception that regulation is restrictive. And although in reality, let's say, almost any operation can be approved when the documentation is done properly. The real bottleneck is not the regulation itself. It is the misunderstanding, incomplete documentation, or the time it takes for authorities to grant the permit. One important thing is to keep in mind is that the true purpose of the regulation is safety. CAA, for example, in Finland, Traficom, they are not requiring the documentation. They are not applying or creating the regulation to make our life difficult. It is made to make sure that the operations or the people in the ground, on the ground and in the aircrafts is safety. And that's the whole purpose of the regulations. Yeah, so the safety is built in the system, and everyone wins: operators, customers, authorities, and society when we follow the regulations. Myself, I'm actually more considering regulation as a shield, not a burden. So the kind of key point many companies overlook is the regulation protects the operator. For example, it is kind of a layer of protection, for example, protecting against accusations of negligence or protecting against liability. It's protecting against reputational damages and protects in case when something unexpected happens. And things, unfortunately, sometimes unacceptable things happens like drone crash or it take a fly away or whatsoever. So this is not a kind of like a regulation slowing you down. This is a regulation shielding your business, helping your business. SORA is actually a practical tool. SORA, the specific operational risk assessment, is often seen as a difficult and heavy process. And to be honest, it is quite a heavy process. But in fact, SORA is a very powerful tool in the right hands. First of all, it forces the operator to think deeply about what are the risks involved in our operations, how they can be mitigated, those risks, what procedures ensure the safety in practice should be over there. And actually many companies discovering weaknesses or improving opportunities through the SORA process. So instead of being kind of extra paperwork, SORA is actually kind of a structured method to think through what you are doing and understanding the risks, mitigating those risks as well. Yeah, the specific category operational authorization, I would say that it is kind of a seal of quality. When authority grants the specific category operational authorization, it is kind of more than just a permit to fly. It's a signal to the market. It shows that your company has controlled and safe way of working. You have kind of like understanding the risks. You following the best practices to mitigate those risks, and you can be trusted by customers, partners, investors, and so on. So in many ways, the authorization works as a quality certificate. It's something you can kind of like be proudly show that, hey, I'm not just a guy with the drone and I do this one just for the hobby. No offense, those ones who is doing kind of as a hobby, doing some flying and even get some money for that one, great thing. But if you want to make one step further in your business, then when you have, for example, SORA authorization, it is an excellent label that, hey, we are seriously of what we are doing. Um, the real challenge is the long approval time. At the moment for Traficom, it might be more or less 1 year to get the SORA authorization, and that is very long time. Authorizations, authorities are well overloaded. There is a lot of approvals coming, and documentation usually varies in quality, and this leads in a way to long review cycles and also requests for clarification and all that when the documentation is not done properly and like there is kind of missing some reality what really you can do or what how you should actually do this one. It takes a lot of time in the CAA, in the authorities to review everything. But when the documents are clear, they are complete, and let's say professionally structured, the process becomes significantly faster. And yeah, in other words, the problem is not the regulation, the problem is the inefficient preparation in documentations. So let's go to the other side, other way. So why actually professional make a difference? Preparing the high quality application is a skill. For example, in Innoavia, we have developed our skills already like 5 to 6 years to become at that level where we are at the moment. It's just like accounting or law or engineering. Regulatory documentation is a kind of own area of expertise. The professionals who work with the operational authorizations every day, they basically know exactly what these authorities are expecting. They understanding the terminology, the structure of the document is done correctly. It avoid the common mistakes, reduce the number of authority questions, and yeah, significantly speed up the process. They have done, kind of professional have usually done similar applications many times before as well, and they know exactly kind of like what works in the authorities, what works, what we have to write in the documentation. So the most companies using an expert save weeks or sometimes months of delays and a lot of headache. So first of all, why Innoavia? We have produced a large number of operational authorizations application over the years. We started 2017, and back then we were flying with the drone weight more than 100 kilo, and we were flying like 50 kilometers PVLOS flights. And we got that one, and it was back then when there was not harmonized European Union legislation. But we've been working on the legislation back then, and so we have done many applications over the year. We know the processes and we know the expectations of the authorities. We use a consistent template and documentation structures that are familiar for authorities as well. And this makes reviewing easier and faster in the authorities and become, yeah, kind of, because they basically know exactly what to look in our documentation, in which page and so on. As a result, our client typically receive decision much more faster with a fewer iterations and less effort on their side. But we are as well fully aware that For example, if you are a startup, you start your company today, and then you should wait like 1 year before get the permit to actually start getting money. Of course, that's impossible. So therefore, we have developed operator as a service. Uh, Basically, how this works is that if you are, for example, a startup company, your pilot can start flying under our umbrella. We take care of the training, of the mandatory trainings, all the audit or administrative work which is actually coming through the regulations, that you have to just make sure that you are, for example, filing and documenting all your flights correctly and so on. So we are taking all that effort from you, and you can basically focus on flying, and yeah, we take care of the rest. So for the startup, this is kind of like a faster way of actually start operating. But also, for example, those one who basically already have even the SORA authorization, for example, cities, this is an excellent service, because then basically you don't need to take care of all that administrative work which is coming for the SORA authorization. So this is kind of like an easy model, yeah, easy model to get started, or to streamline your operation and processes. That's about my talk. So as a conclusion, at least I consider that the regulation is not the obstacle. It is actually an enabler. It is an excellent label of your operations, that you are understanding the risks and you are operating accordingly of those risks. Thanks. I see that we have 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes time, if there's any questions.